Hello, everyone. Good morning and good evening, depending on the time zone you are joining from. On behalf of Indian Muslim Relief and Charities, IMRC, the Indian Muslims of Bay Area, California, USA, and Ambedkar King Study Circle, California, I would like to warmly welcome you all to this special remembrance meeting. We gather here today to honor the memory of Mr. Abdul Ghafoor Majeed Noorani, who left us on 29th of August. Affectionately known as Ghafoor Boy to his friends and A.G. Noorani in the public life. A.G. Noorani was a distinguished advocate practicing in the Bombay High Court, Mumbai, and in the Supreme Court of India. By profession, he was a lawyer and advocate. However, he was even more renowned for his profi- uh, prolific writing on the wide range of subjects, including constitutional law, politics, history, religion, and the range of subjects. I am grateful to have that opportunity to moderate this meeting, remembrance meeting, as I, like millions of others, have gained an understanding of the Constitution, law, politics, history, and social justice through his work, especially writings. The Frontline magazine, which first introduced to me to Mr. A.G. Noorani, captured his essence perfectly in his obituary, which is published after his demise, sad demise. Frontline captured us. His whole life was writing, at least in his later years. Writing was his life. We are fortunate to have two esteemed speakers with us today, Professor Abdul Shaban and Dr. Danish Khan. I would like to welcome both of them to this important panel. Thank you both for joining us and sharing your insight on this significant occasion. So, thank you, Professor Shaban and Dr. Khan.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Welcome. So
Thank you,
this
Matt.
meeting, first we will have two speakers go one by one, and they will speak for 20 minutes each. Followed by that, we will have a Q&A. So the audience who have Q&A, please go forward and start. Put your questions or comments in the channel, in the website, the YouTube website that you are watching this one, and we will go from here. Without much ado, I would like to welcome our first speaker, Professor Abdul Shaban. I'd like to start with a very small introduction, despite we have a lot of things to say about Professor Shaban Bhai. It's my pleasure to introduce Professor Abdul Shaban, an esteemed academic and chairperson at the Center for Public Policy, Habitat and Human Development at Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Mumbai. Professor Shaban holds a PhD in economics and has made significant contribution to the research on entrepreneurship, creative industries, and religious minorities. He has also served on various high-profile committees, which I'd like to mention a couple of them, including the Post-Chachar Evolution Committee and the D. Sudhir Commission. The later one, which assess the socio-economic and educational status of Muslims in the Telangana state. His work was taken to him to a leading universities around the world, and he's a published author of several notable books. I would like to mention a couple of them later. And Professor Shaban's notable works include The Lives of Muslims in India, Politics, Exclusion, and Violence and Creative Industry in India. These are the two books I mentioned that he has written a lot. We look forward to hearing from Professor Shaban's reflections today as we gather here to honor the legacy of Mr. A.G. Noorani. It's over to you, Professor Shaban.
Thank you. Uh, Thank you, sir. Thank you for the invitation. And I'm very thankful to the organizers for inviting me to speak on such an eminent person like Abdul Ghafoor Noorani, and lovingly we call Noorani Sahab or A.G. Noorani in the academic writing. Uh, what I will be talking about, he wrote on so many things. uh, because he was a prolific writer and he was a kind of storehouse of data and a kind of analytical machine, what I say. But I will confine myself today to secularism, communalism, and freedom. Uh, and these actually the points are emerging from his own writing, his interviews, his writing on in magazines or books, and sometimes personal discussions. I had a few occasions to meet him, and I always wondered about him, his memory and analytical ability. What I say, he was a storehouse house of data, both read and observed, and brilliantly analyzed with objectivity without any fear and favor. That was actually A.G. Noorani Sahab. Uh, Recently in the obituary, N. Ram, the Hindu group chairman, what actually editor, uh, he said that the Hindu could not match Noorani's ability to find a reference or documentation within minutes because he was the person who will remember exactly where is the thing which actually need to be consulted immediately, and that was like a speed of computer, and that actually the prolific ability he has. Born in Mumbai in 1930, 6 September 1930, and passed away on 29th August 2024. It's a long 93 years career. I think that almost 70 years had gone in the learning and writing. That's what actually the person he was. Uh, he was a scholar who understood Indian society, India's past, its pluralism, rabid communalism, human rights, democracy, and constitution. Also because he saw them, he experienced them before independence and after the independence, how the things had evolved, what were the ideals and what we achieved later on. That actually kind of reflection he had. He was the person who had seen India before and after the partition, and that actually the richness came in from that also, his observations. He started practicing as a lawyer in 1950s in Mumbai High Court, and it is actually written, well written by many and described by many, that he was exposed to the state politics in the initial years itself. The first case comes from the on the behest of Mirdula Sarabhai, a rebel Congress leader and obviously sister of Vikram Sarabhai, to fight a case as a young lawyer to defend Sheikh Abdullah when he was arrested in 1958 as a part of Kashmir conspiracy, because they were thinking that Kashmir, perhaps Sheikh Abdullah conspired. And the Indian government did not allow any foreign lawyer for the Sheikh Abdullah because that was the restriction placed by the Nehru, that one cannot, the government, that one cannot mobilize the foreign lawyer. So as a young lawyer, he started that. Now I come to the what was his nature? It's secular by nature. And Indian secularism is not actually the Marxian secularism. Indian secularism basically works on the two foot. Is that actually, you adopt the religion, you be or actually welcome all the religion and treat equally all the religion. That actually the differences between the Western secularism and the Eastern secularism, or actually we say the Indian kind of secularism. And he was the part who actually praised the Indian secularism, and actually throughout the life he struggled for that. Because he grew up in a plural and multicultural society, he learned from each group, and also through writing, he scolded, I emphasize this, he scolded all, he left none. Uh, when he felt that they were wrong. So he scolded everybody. That is why when he criticized the Muslim League and Jinnah, also comes heavily on the RSS and BJP. So he never left anybody, the Muslim League or RSS, and even does not spare mistakes of omission of Gandhi or Nehru, whom he takes with great reverence on other occasions, but he does not leave them also. Uh, the last line, which actually often quoted, I'm in the Babri Masjid. He was great, actually, kind of futuristic that way, and also that he had expectations. I'm just telling that what he wrote in the introduction on in the book, for the two books. came out on the Babri Masjid demolition. And in the introduction, he wrote, "In this heartbreaking task, I remain hopeful, nonetheless, that secular forces will reassert themselves despite all kind of destruction in the post-independent India." He had seen secular India and he strived for it. His whole life was devoted to the protection of democratic institutions, promoting equality, justice, and peace. He was concerned about the rise of far rights in India, which was compromising the secular principles of the country. And he was pained, and often in the meeting when we had actually either in Tata Institute or outside in the South Mumbai, he will lament that what is actually going on. And he often that we may pass because our life is not left more, but all of you who will live slightly more will have to struggle. That's what actually he was telling. But strive for that actually the multicultural fabric of the country is not broken. Simultaneously, he was concerned about the extremism among the Muslims also in different parts of the globe, which in turn were compromising the civil and citizenry rights of Muslims in different countries. That was actually and within India, because he felt always that these kind of things are feeding on each other. He was someone who had seen the partition of India closely and also the riots like Bhiwandi in 1970, Moradabad, later Hashimpura, Meerut, Bhagalpur, Mumbai, and Bhiwandi in 1984, riots against Sikhs in 1984, demolition of the Babri Mosque in 1992, Mumbai riots in 1992, Gujarat riots in 2002. For him, these were due to corrosion of democracy, decay of institutions. He said this is decay of institutions, and that once the institutions decay, then the societies collapse. And the lack of right of fuller citizenship because of the decay of institutions does not allow the fuller citizenship of the people. Perhaps, which actually he says that perhaps Dr. Ambedkar tried to guard that, and I mean the country is not able to uphold that. On erosion of democracy, I mean, just I say the two things that he laments the type of democracy it is, and particularly if you cannot invite foreign scholars in the conferences in India, that actually happened. And it started from the Congress time, it is not the new. So it actually started the foreign scholar if you're holding any conference, and often he lamented when we met, and he wrote at many places. Second thing, what he said, he criticized also Nehru when he does not allow the foreign lawyers to defend Sheikh Abdullah. He said actually it's the human right. A person can mobilize from anywhere, and actually he can debate within the limits of the law, and it is important that you allow other people to defend. He was a pragmatic scholar. One way, he was also critical to Nehru, who he thinks was a Marxist secular, and says that Nehru advocated that there are no religious differences in India but economic differences. The development will solve the religious problem. He says that Nehru had that idea, but that had not happened. He says that Nehru was wrong. Indians, irrespective of their economic status, are conscious of their religions. As such, we have to address the emotional aspect of it and as well as economic aspect of it. So that what actually made him different from the Western secularism, and largely he falls here in the Gandhian framework that actually are larger Indian scholars who actually pursue secularism in India. Despite being critical to the current situation, I mean, at several, writing and actually the personal discussions, he also brought out several times. He has great praise for the way Hindus have understood minorities in India, as I will argue, later. But he was also concerned that Hindus still need to have a greater understanding of Muslims and other minorities, where he was criticizing them, but also praising simultaneously. He criticized the Muslim elite classes also, and he said that and their leadership, because the Muslims elite, he was very, one way harsh on them. He called it takes self-styled leader. I mean, he says they are self-styled leader, and particularly, I mean, there are several people he says, but some of them openly written in the text and many magazines like Sayyid Sahabuddin. He says that he, after setting up the Babri Masjid Action Committee, gave the call for boycott of the official function including Republic Day, alienating Hindus from Muslims and Muslims from Muslims. He says Sayyid Sahabuddin was a complete disappointment. So look at his criticism. He was not afraid of anything, and he will go and call whatsoever he understood that somebody is doing mistake, and he said your disappointment. To build up the Muslim community and for the survival of Indian pluralism, uh, and particularly in the educational institutions, because there is a large number of people who said that uh, Muslim institutions are minority institutions where actually the majority community could not come, I mean, should not come. But sometimes he was not actually, following those kind of arguments. But he said Muslim must bring Hindu students and Hindu teachers and cooperate with the state in building educational campuses. And he was of that because that actually assimilation will happen from there, not from anywhere else. For the development of Muslims, even he goes to uh, go to follow the advice of Jinnah. And he says the Jinnah had said when the partition had happened that Muslims in India were not to engage in unnecessary fight with Hindus. He asked to concentrate on education, technology, business, industry, so that there is a hopeful future. So even he goes beyond that and actually brings together. And this all is done in order to create a sense in the country. For communal rights, he blamed specifically uh, to a political party, and that party, I mean, all of you know, since 1980s, and specifically he called one cultural organization which is changing the majority community mindset against the minority. So he was very critical on that. He also says that communalism gets aggravated also by the mistakes of the Muslim, immature behavior, elitist politics. So he also, is that way critical to both. He was a defender of freedom and human rights. He was a strong defender of democracy, freedom, human rights, be it law of sedition on Kashmir or violation of human rights during the riots in India. He praised K.M. Munshi, particularly uh, K.M. Munshi, that who led the deletion of the word sedition because IPC, which we inherited from the British, had that one and led to that. And he criticized the five judges bench, which actually in 1962 upheld the sedition, compromising the freedom of speech. That they said that he criticized the bench that from the back door, and particularly recently, uh, Kalishwaram Raj writes in the recent post that actually what Noorani said, that it is the lasting disgrace of the Supreme Court that it brought particularly the provision of sedition, brought back by the back door after 14 years. When the constitution be adopted, ignoring totally the constant assembly debate and the enormous labor preceding it, and particularly K.M. Munshi's debate, that if they did not include, why you validated it again in 1962. Noorani also wrote that there is no democracy without ideas like secularism, federalism, human dignity. And that was actually, for him, democracy is not only holding only election. Democracy is democracy when you have all the institutions of democracy, functioning well. He was also very critical. I will come to that. Critical to the two nation theory and Jinnah, because it is very important that we discuss that what he wrote, because he's seen both pre-independent India and independent India. I mean, he went through the turmoil of the partition also. He says that Jinnah lacked objectivity. He calls that the homeland for Muslim. I mean, that's what he criticized Jinnah, that he calls homeland of Muslim Punjab and frontiers. But what about Kerala, where the Islam came first? And what about, he also says, what about the Mumbai? Is Mumbai not my homeland? And only the Punjab and actually the frontiers are the homeland. So this is a kind of way he meets the criticism. Criticizes the, Jinnah. He says the two nation theory was built on falsehood. Very important. Actually, this is actually the crucial thing. Somebody who had lived experience India, he says that it was built on the falsehood, especially to Jinnah. He says that he believed where Muslims are in majority, their homeland, and that where actually comes heavily. And again, he says that perhaps praises the Hindus that they understood a bit of Indian minorities, but again becomes critical because of the right of the far right in India later years. Jinnah was more complicated for him. He did not agree to the Kashmir settlement on the 1st November 1947 when Mountbatten offered the plebiscite in Hyderabad and actually uh, that way. So that actually created for him that he said that the opportunity was lost to find a settlement of this. Maybe that the issue would have been settled, but it was actually lost because of the Jinnah's kind of, I mean, understanding what actually Jinnah had. And he was academic critic. I think that uh, uh, Danish Bhai will talk about it much more. But what I say that he was also critic, and particularly for our point of view, academic point of view, three things I will say. Uh, he says that in India, writing is actually there's lots of falsehood in the Indian history. I mean, it is sometimes first thing he says it is nationalistic. History need to be objective, but what we have it is nationalistic. It is idolatry that it praises the upper class and it is not actually kind of subaltern writing. So subalterns are actually left out. And third, he says, which actually I will add through the discussions which actually I found, he says that there are many Muslim leaders and the Muslim problems, which actually no historian mention. The same actually he talks about, and often he was pained that particularly Dalit and Muslim face exclusion from the writing. So they don't have actually the common Muslim, common Hindu, Dalit. They don't find actually space in that. And that what he also says, whether it is Muhammad Ali, I mean M.A. Ansari, Hakim Ajmal Khan, or Maulana Azad, Ibn Badruddin Tayyab don't find space even in Mumbai history. So that actually a kind of, and he was very critical to the communalist, and particularly I will just highlight from his book and actually the pages. And he wrote the RSS a menace to India, and where he wrote, I mean, very critically, he wrote against the organization. Then he says organization is at war with India's past because for his understanding, India is a different country, and perhaps RSS is not able to understand that. It belittles three of the greatest builder of the Indian state: Ashoka, the Buddhist; Akbar, the Muslim; and the Nehru, a civilized, enlightened Hindu. They could not understand that he would, I mean, it would wipe out centuries of achievement for which the world has acclaimed India and replace it that with its own narrow divisive ideology. So he was very pained on that. And he also brings in that what actually scientific democracy and scientific society the Dr. Ambedkar wanted to point out, to form and to see the India emerges in that direction, that also is actually belied because of this kind of rise of these kind of forces. They actually take us somewhere else. Another book where actually he wrote Savarkar and Hindutva, he criticizes Savarkar and particularly on very small quote I bring here, rejecting the inclusive secular concept of territorial nationalism and advocating exclusivist communal concept of cultural nationalism. So for him, so nationalism was, but actually it's a cultural nationalism, not actually territorial nationalism. But culture was actually assumed as a territory, and that becomes. And he wrote many books, and actually all these books are. I mean, he wrote on many things from Hyderabad, Indo-China border, Islam in South Asia, Kashmir dispute, Jinnah and Tilak, RSS and BJP, all actually these things, so many things he wrote. But what I will do, I will sum it up here because of lack of time. To sum up, Abdul Ghafoor Sahab was a great scholar of the constitution, human rights and law, and also a great human being. His demise is an immense loss to the country, to the champions of democracy and human rights, and Muslims as well. May he rest in peace. That what actually we pray. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Professor Shaban Bhai, for your time in late in India, and your talk covered within this 20 minutes of breadth and depth of A.G. Noorani's work. We definitely got how he worked for the democratic inclusion and how it is not realized or rejected in the guise of rise of the Hindu supremacist or Hindu fundamentalism in India, and he never separated secularism from the democracy. And Eugene Noorani firmly believed that the believed and he rejected the idea of a nation founded on religion, either it is for Jinnah's Pakistan or the RSS Hindu Rashtra. And you covered well about that how Eugene Noorani criticized almost everybody, not on their personality, but based on their fundamental positions they are taking on particular issues. However, he is also acknowledging and prizing their valuable contributions where they have the due. And thank you very much for your reflections. Now we go to our next speaker. I would like to introduce and welcome Dr. Uh, Danish Khan. Meanwhile, if anybody have any questions or comments from Professor Shaban Stock, please feel free and share it in the comment sections of the screen. Now, I would like to introduce Dr. Danish Khan, who holds PhD from University of Oxford and Master of Arts from King's College in London. His research focuses on the role of Muslims as economic actors in colonial India. He has contributed extensively to Indian media as a foreign correspondent and currently serves as a president of Indian Journalists Association in London. Dr. Khan is the author of Escaped: True Stories of Indian Fugitives in London and has written numerous articles and features on foreign policy, business, legal proceedings, and human rights. His work has been published in Mumbai Mirror, Hindustan Times, Money Control, Scroll, and The Wire, to mention a few. We eagerly await Dr. Khan's insights today as we gather together to honor the remarkable legacy of A.G. Noorani. Over to Dr. Khan.
Thank you very much, Kartik, for that introduction. And thank you to Sahir Bhai and Kings Ambedkar and everyone for inviting us. And we just heard from Professor Abdul Shaban, a very detailed, if I will say, exposition on the life and work of Dr. A.G. Noorani, of course, who sadly passed away. Uh, I mean, the first thing that strikes me upon reading and reflecting upon A.J. Noorani Saab is the fact that he made research fashionable. And by that I mean as a practitioner in mainstream media, because remember, he was writing for almost everyone at one stage of time. I mean, a wide range of publication. He clearly made research very fashionable in terms of accuracy, in terms of that yearning for data and for paperwork. I mean, now tales are legendary in Delhi and Mumbai legal circles about how he will call up people to lay his hands on papers, on research documents, just so that he can include them in his writings and make it as up to date and as accurate as possible. And N. Ram, who was one of his closest friends, is on record saying that they never got any problems from the legal fraternity in terms of legal notices, because he was so meticulous in his writings that, and of course his own law background made it very difficult for people. I'm sure a lot must be yearning to drag him to courts for defamation and for all sorts of trivial suits, but how they were just not, it was not possible for them to do. So I'll just begin a little bit about his early life, because my research is on the Muslim capitalists in colonial Bombay, and Noorani Saab actually belonged to the Kachi Memon community. This particular community, of course, has massive contribution in the development of Bombay as a traditional, as a trading body and as a cosmopolitan city. The Khojas, Boras, and the Memons were part of that small group of communities in Bombay, including the Parsis, the Bhatias, the Banyas, and the Marwaris and others, who made Bombay was what it is now. And Noorani Saab belonged to this Kachi Memon community. His family background was in trade, was in business. They were champions of business. And Noorani Saab, of course, took a somewhat different trajectory. Of course, he was interested in writing and research, but very early on we could see a glimpse of his personality. Noorani Saab's niece, Fauzia Madni, who worked in the Times of India for a very long time, she's on record saying that how when he was a student in St. Mary's High School in Baikala, Mumbai, the principal did not allow him to sit for his 10th exam, saying that the attendance was not enough or that he will not do well. So he had to repeat that one crucial year for the simple reason that he was very interested in the freedom struggle and his attendance got affected. So we are talking about a person who has really seen the freedom struggle, with his own eyes and has experienced it. So he missed that particular year because he was not allowed to sit for that. Not surprisingly, he did very well when he sat for the next year, and then he went to the government law college in Mumbai, which is a very famous institute for people to study law. So in that way, very similar background, if I may say so, because of his involvement in law, like the people he wrote about, Jinnah, Gandhi, Nehru, they were all lawyers in some essence. And that's what he was attracted towards. And as I said, not a very easy decision, I might say, considering that his family was all into business, but he set out on a different path of his own. And as Professor Abdul Shaban said, he got attracted to human rights issues at a very early age. I did a little bit of research among the archives actually some time back, and I figured out that right in the mid 50s, it seems that he was pestering New Delhi for documents, for papers on the Kashmir policy. So much so that the Babus, the bureaucrats sitting in New Delhi, started questioning about what should be the policy about government officials sharing important documents on issues like the Kashmir with the wider public when they are being asked for it. So, I mean, in the 50s, he must be in his 20s. So from that early age, he was always on the lookout for research, for papers, and for documents. And this is something which is there in the National Archives. And I just found it amazing that he made the bureaucrats think about what they should do in terms of sharing important government documents to the public, what policy they must adopt. It is also very less known that he was actually jailed in the 60s during the conflict with China. There was this provision, and he was, of course, very vocal in his thoughts, in his writings, in his activism, and he was put in jail in Yerwada prison. He was there for a few months. Of course, he was then let out. That had a massive impact on him, and he then in some ways perhaps became attracted to this idea of countering hegemony, of countering injustice, of also keeping his eyes and ears open to wherever there is injustice. And I think that was ingrained in him because of his background. I may I said that he was from this commercial background, but a branch of his family was also into reading, writing, and literature. And they were sitting with the progressive poets of that time who had made Bombay their center. So he had a family background in trade and commerce, but he was very much alive to the literature, to writings, and to creative thoughts. And all of these contributed to his personality, which was what we see over the last few years in his writing, last few decades actually in his writings. He wrote this biography of Badruddin Tayyibji, and it's a very interesting facet of his life that I want to mention, because Badruddin Tayyibji was from Western India. He was from Mumbai, and he had this very interesting correspondence with Sir Syed Ahmad on the question of whether Muslims should join the Congress or keep away. And this is something which happened early years of the Congress party. And he included all of that analysis in his book, which he, by the way, wrote because of encouragement from AAA Faizi. Now, Professor Faizi was this very famous public intellectual. He was a big scholar of Islamic law. He was also India's ambassador to Egypt. And Professor Faizi was related to Badruddin Tayyibji. So he got inspired by that, and he wrote this biography of Badruddin Tayyibji, highlighting, if I may say, a different template of Muslim political leadership. because diversity is what he was always after. He was not for a history or for academic writing to be written in a prescribed format, or making heroes or villains out of people. And Badruddin Tayyibji for AG Noorani represented someone who was a good example of not going with the flow. Because, as I said, Badruddin Tayyibji took a stand against Sir Syed Ahmed's policy of Muslims staying away from the Congress. So the work that AG Noorani undertook reflected his yearning for research, his yearning for scholarship, and attention to detail. So there were no heroes or villains. You could see him writing about Ambedkar or Jinnah or Gandhi in very good words, but perhaps the very next article in Frontline or in EPW or in Illustrated Weekly could, see him highlight about what they could have done. So, he calls Jinnah a miser who will always want money from his clients, because, of course, he was a lawyer and that's what he wanted to do. But he will also speak about how Jinnah himself was quite fair in his dealings with people, with different stakeholders in the society around. So he was, in a sense, a man who went by records. He may have been passionate about certain causes, but he will never let those feelings. He will change his stand in the wake of records or in the wake of his scholarship that he will find. And we spoke about alliances. He was a true believer in forging alliances across the society, be it the Dalit groups, be it like-minded Hindus, be it like-minded Christians, so much so that in the 1960s, when Dr. Sayyid Mahmood started the Majlis-e-Mushawarat, Noorani Saab did not agree to be a member of that particular organization, because he said that you have to open the membership of this body to Indians irrespective of their class, caste. And till you do that, I will be uncomfortable. I don't see myself becoming part of an exclusive kind of a body which seems to espouse only one particular cause without seeking the need to build bridges. And I think he was a believer of this till the last moment. And there are numerous examples of his collaborating with people, with activists, across the globe to espouse those causes. Uh, then, of course, as I said, Professor Shaban already spoke about his views of Muslim political leadership. He was not very comfortable. For example, he always made it very clear that Muslims, as such, are very bad on documentation. They don't do research. They don't compile data. They are very bad in keeping their history. And he had no problem in saying it upfront. So the Babri Masjid issue, of which he himself has written so much, he was very clear. He said a lot of important documentation on Babri Masjid is actually being done by Hindus. And of course, I mean, he does praise Athar Ali of Aligarh and few other people. He said primarily the research, be it archaeology, the history of the Babri Masjid, it's all done by Hindus. So he was always on the lookout and was a true votary of alliances. And it's also interesting because I used to speak. I'm still in touch with so many editors and senior journalists. I was surprised when one of them, a very senior, said that initially they thought that AG Noorani was some sort of Islamist because he was only writing about Muslim causes, or he was writing about the sufferings of Muslims. But of course, they then corrected that view because of the stand and his own writings over the last few years is testimony to the fact that he was anything but a Muslim activist or somebody who is just interested in the advancement of the Muslim community. That will be very unfair. But at the same time, what I find very interesting is he was also not a community activist as such. Faizan Mustafa has written about it as well, and I found in my interaction with several Mumbai, activists saying that, oh, but he doesn't come out, he doesn't speak on this, he doesn't do anything on triple talaq. And I got the sense that people had that expectation, but I think Noorani Saab primarily was a writer and a researcher. Give him his books, give him his pen and paper, and he'll be the happiest man, which is what his life has been. is a supreme example of that. In the 80s, again, there was this bit of information that I got from the archives, National Archives. He wrote some series of articles on election commission. Mind you, he's a man of course, immense interest, had a hold on topics ranging from Kashmir to China to Islam. So he wrote something on the election commission, and it seems to got people very excited in terms of, right, here is something we have to do about it. So a lot of state election committees started getting letters from the bureaucrats sitting in Delhi saying that this is the article which Mr. Noorani has written. Do you have any comments to offer on this? And they all seem to then write their thoughts on how they think Noorani Saab has written about the election commission. Some of them said, oh, he's hypercritical, we can avoid him, he's always criticizing. Then some said that no, we have to take on board whatever he has said, we can perhaps do a bit of study on that. The point I'm trying to make is it will only be over the next 10, 20, 30 years that we will fully understand the impact his scholarship had on the political spectrum. Because even though he was identified as someone left-leaning or a secular, people across, intellectuals across the political divide gave him respect. They knew that what Noorani has written is something we have to pay attention. And they all did. I mean, be it M.V. Kamath, who was once the senior editor in Times of India and a known right-wing sympathetic person, they will devour everything that Noorani Saab had to write. They will look forward to his writings, and I think it continued till the end. Of course, he had critical thoughts on Savarkar and RSS and everything, but they will still sit up and notice what A.G. Noorani has to write. And I think that's where lies his unique personality and the amazing breadth, depth that he brought to his scholarship and to his rigorous research. For example, on Jinnah, he also, of course, wrote this very interesting book on Jinnah and Tilak. And that came across from his feeling that why is it that here is a person who struck fairly good working relationship with people like Gokhale, like Madan Mohan Malviya and Lajpat Rai, but why is it that Jinnah didn't really go along well with Gandhi? And that is the kind of thinking that he put in his work, and that led to this work about this interesting book about Tilak's relationship with Jinnah. Of course, in the Bombay setting. So he was a scholar of having this very deep and sharp, penetrating eyes on certain issues that so many research scholars might find not that relevant, but he had this knack of turning it around and making history accessible and making it, writing it in a way that should appeal to the common people. And his yearning for writing, I think, is just an inspiration for any academic and journalist, because he will write so much, and then he will always be on the lookout on where can he get it published. I mean, Tista Setalwad has written that was one thought that animated him day in and day night. One article is done. Now, what is next? Where will he get it published? Who should he reach out to? So he was very particular about his writing regime, and I think his house is testimony to that. It was full of books. I've seen pictures posted by a former editor of Frontline who had this task of speaking to him regularly, and he invited him home. He will just be among his books. Even his kitchen had books, and I have this one volume of Transfer of Power, which was published in the early 80s, and he's reviewed even that. So I mean, his scholarship is just amazing. But most importantly, I think what he has left for us to reflect upon is the need to forge alliances and not having idols made out of people. He was very particular about about highlighting both the negative as well as positive. He has praised Gandhi. He has also criticized Gandhi. He has good things to say about Nehru, but he also had issues with the way Nehru handled some of the important issues of the day. So he was was never comfortable with putting people in a particular shelf. He will just go by records, he will just go by his archives, and he will just be penetrating in his thoughts about different personalities. Just also other point that I wanted to know, that uh, judiciary was something that he was very much particular about, and I know our time is coming up, but he was somebody who always reflected back. So the Shahidganj mosque issue, for example, which happened in Lahore, for those who don't know, it was basically a controversy about a mosque which was later converted into a gurudwara over a period of time. And then in the 1930s, the Muslims went to the court saying that this was originally a mosque and that it should be restored back. But the judges, right from the local court right up to the Privy Council, said that no, the law of limitation applies. It's been far too long for you to come back and say that we want our mosque back. And he quotes the then Punjab Premier, Sir Sikandar Hayat Khan, who said that we can't keep on going back. Of course, I'm speaking about this in terms of the Babri Masjid. But the important point that I would like to underline is not what happened in terms of the Babri Masjid judgment, but the need to document, the need to research, and the need to keep all those papers and massive public opinion that can be built up based on your research. And I think his life is something that just kind of reflects the need to research and to document. And I think I will just stop at that, because my time is up, and we can carry on this discussion later. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for a wonderful reflection. Dr. Khan vividly brought A.G. Noorani's whole works and life to our imagination, capturing much details with his given 20 minutes and with a great clarity. Dr. Khan, your talk highlighted the depth of Noorani's contribution, offering an insightful and enriching reflection. I'd like to mention two before we open the forum for the question and answer, so that the audience also can collect their thoughts and share the questions in the comment. So here I have a little difficulty and need help from Nice. I'm not able to see the comment. Like one person asked at the end of the talk, will there be a Q&A? Uh, and I'm not able to see any further on that. So Nice or somebody helps me to put this in my private chat. I can ask the same questions. And and quickly on 2 points on Dr. Khan's talk, which really struck me was like um, Ghafoor Bhai was against any exclusivism, which is very easy to tell, but is tremendously very tough to follow, especially a person from minority community and against exclusivism, which he sees both the Muslim exclusivism or the Hindu exclusivism. It's will not help the nation or will not help the citizens of the nation to live in a democratic setup. And to achieve this democratic setup, he continuously emphasized on forging the alliances across the spectrum of different religion. Even our previous speaker, Dr. Shaban, also reflected that how Noorani was against the nation to be found on the notion of religion. If we go with religion as a base for a nation, that there are major five religion and which is split upon like around 4,000 religions in the world, which we cannot imagine. We do not know how many nations that has to be created for this. And as a surprise, that even to me, that A.G. Noorani was jailed during the China War, and it is not surprising after a listen to Dr. Khan, because his imprisonment, in my opinion, reflects his significance, that how much he disturbed the Indian state. And I see it's a failure of law and order rather the failure of a man like A.G. Noorani. And I like to stop here for the question from audience. And meanwhile, I think there is some technical issue to collect the questions, and I would like to shoot my questions from to the both of the speakers, which I think very much important to reflect. But I think you touched upon, since you have to cover many, that I feel that it needs to be covered more. It is about the Hindu supremacy or the Hindu fundamentalism. and the organization which is propagating this idea. So my question is, for a vibrant democracy, citizens must stay informed about political developments. I view citizens as a collective, always influenced by political organizations, media, etc., with no one entirely free from such influence. The individual cannot say that I am free from any influence, that I'm thinking on my own without any influence. That's that's not a fact at all. It cannot be. A.G. Noorani extensively wrote about the RSS tactics and their pursuit for the strategy for the state power. Um, he is writing since its formation. If when we go through his articles from Frontline or before in other magazines that he is writing, why I'm asking this question is A.G. Noorani writing from the beginning or mentioning from the beginning the RSS and the BJP are same and they have a division of labor. But many people in India, especially in the 90s, even in the 90s, after the RSS and the BJP rising in the political front, not able to understand that both are same. And as a matter of fact, still also some people think that RSS and BJP is different. I would like to mention uh, one thing, one incident, what he writes in one of his articles, that he writes about how the BJP was able to get into the corridors of power in the post 90 election, especially in 1991. He wrote that when Chandrasekhar's government was brought down by Rajiv Gandhi, and there was a election thrown up on Indian state in India, and it is on March 9th, 1991, when the government was dismissed. Immediately, the the RSS arranged a meeting, and the BJP leaders rushed to the Nagpur office, that is RSS office. And there was an option put on the table by RSS to the BJP that RSS will help BJP to campaign for the election, but RSS told very clearly, we will not share any political platform with you during the election campaign. And that's how they did the entire work, and the BJP was able to win 120 seats. And so shamelessly, after the election, even there were allegations that PV Narasimha Rao was trying to get a faction of support from RSS, which is brokered by then the RSS chief. So all these things, I don't want to get into the more details of that. And at the end, Nurani blamed PV Narasimha Rao for the rise of RSS politically, especially paving the way for the demolition of the Majid. And he did not stop there. He went and called PV Narasimha Rao as a von Hindenburg of Germany, the German president von Hindenburg, that who appointed Hitler as the chancellor. And here I stop, and I would like to hear both of interested to listen to both of your opinion, that how as a citizen that we have to be very conscious of being influenced by this RSS and the whole media and their propaganda, and how to forge an alliance on the lines that Ghafoor boy is expecting us to do. Over to anyone. It's up to you. Anybody can go first. Oh, I think Professor Shaban, I think you are in
Uh,
mute.
Thank you. I mean, this is one question he often says that it is. I mean, he wrote a book on that division of labor. Uh, and that what he says that ultimately, I mean, if you look at the Johnson, uh, was actually part of uh, the organization, and later on, actually from that emerges the BJP. So it is a philosophy versus actually a kind of political practice. So he's not wrong on that. That actually there is a philosophical base from where actually the whole thing is derived. The important is that I mean obviously the issue which actually confronts him much more is for him it is not that actually the religion and politics you can create it, but for him and many Christian can create, Muslim can create, but the for him, I mean, if you create in a healthy way, it is a good way. But when you try to exercise the majority minority that dynamics and the majoritarianism and the compromising the rights of the existence of other communities are actually the other communities feel threatened from that. That is actually the kind of question he actually brings in much more uh, in his actually the talks and then discussions. He says that uh, and this is the core what he says that any far right emerges and anyone any political party take that kind of I mean that kind of position where he I mean that political party start compromising the minorities I mean rights in those the politics, and that was actually his concern. So he does not leave where when he see the AG Noorani, when he says that actually the Muslim area homeland. So he says if the Jinnah calls that there is a Muslim homeland, then also the Hindus have their homeland. That is what actually he equates. But that is what he was critical to the both the Muslims and Hindus that at least do not compromise each other's equality, liberty, and work with the fraternity. And that was actually his. So one thing was actually very clear, what I actually repeat very quickly, that he does not see the difference because it is a one philosophy, one practicing, one philosophizing, one practicing, and in that RSS and the BJP. Similarly, actually, he links many more actually the in Jamaate, I'm sorry, Jamaat and many other people in the Muslim League. So he was, as I said, he was somebody who does not leave anybody, and he was so critical to both of them, and that was actually his scholarship and honesty with which actually he can, and that is why many people called him sometime as I mean earlier said that some people considered him as Islamist, but he was not Islamist. He was somebody who looked from the angle, sharp angle, and he criticized Muslims also. He criticized Hindus also for doing, and obviously he came heavily on the RSS because he felt that at least idea of India, which actually we had, is actually breaking down because of the kind of rise of the sectarianism in Indian politics because of some of the philosophies which actually he found unfiltered. That's it.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Shaban. So over to Dr. Yukon.
Well, all I would like to say is that his life and legacy leaves all of us to understand and reflect that it's very important to forge alliances, to also undertake research and documentation. So much of his work are foundational in those regards. I mean, this his book about Muslims, a documentary record, is a very great compilation of some of the letters, correspondence, and issues that pertains to Muslims. It's like a set text for people studying or researching Muslims in South Asia. So he was very fantastic on that aspect. And I mean, at the risk of repeating myself, I would just like to say that if that's one takeaway, it is the need for research and documentation and to forge alliances. I only hope that whoever is in charge of his homes and his books and his letters and correspondence does this job of making a very great archive so that future scholars can reflect upon those writings, on his books, on his correspondence, and it should be housed in a very relevant institution that should be open to scholars, and that is the best way to look at his life and legacy. I would just like to end by saying that his love for food was phenomenal. So many people have so many tales, and I've heard so many tales from academics here in the UK who have gone there. A meeting has been set up and they go and meet him in a restaurant for lunch or dinner, and they are just treated to this whole host of dishes lying on the table, which left them wondering how are two people going to eat so much food. But he was a foodie. He loved food and he loved to experiment. And dastarkhan kafi bada hota tha unka. I had the occasion to speak to him over the phone once, and I told him that I'm researching capitalism in Bombay, and of course I thought that he is from the Kachi Memon community. He might speak a bit, and he just said, "Oh, unfortunately, I don't know much about them. I can't really help you with it," which is, of course, his way of saying that, well, I'm too busy with my other pursuits and other research, so I will leave that for another day. So that's what I would like to say about him.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Khan. So, Brother Shaban, there was a question in the comment. I think Dr. Khan has already answered. The question is, as one of you or both of you may have interacted with or met A.G. Noorani, could you share any insights into his lighter side, perhaps in sense of humor? I think
Uh,
over to you,
I
Shaban.
think that, yeah, I mean, several times we met, but given that his personality was also, uh, many people called him also snobbish, because he was very strong in ideas and sometimes he did not like. And given that also that he was such a great, I mean, learned person. Many times mostly it used to happen about the food. I remember once in Hyderabad, he was on the wheelchair. We were discussing forging alliance for the Danish said. And the forging alliance was in Maharashtra. That whether it is possible that Dalit and Muslim come together here to really, because these are subaltern groups and they are not represented in the politics and nobody cares about them. And when the, I mean, that what actually after having the great, I mean, very critical discussions, he says the but food is missing here. We need food in order to think more. Uh, and that what actually already Danishwai told. And it is also said that Bazwan used to come from Kashmir uh, to his house from flight. So that was the kind of foodie he was. Uh, and obviously, I mean, because generally there was so much gap in the stature. I mean, always I see. So he always remained very respectful, not joking with him, not actually entering into the lighter moments when actually was there, but only food we had that. That's what I can share.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah,
And
thank
also,
you.
if I may mention quickly,
Please.
very, he didn't want, if I mean, it's not my experience, but what people have said, that if two people were supposed to meet and if there was a third person, he wouldn't meet. He will say that no, sorry. And I mean, he had the guts to say that even in Pakistan, where in a meeting. There was another army officer who was coming, and as Iftikhar Jalani has written, the journalist, that there was another journal who wanted to be a part of it, and he said, no, if there's more people than what was decided, I'm not having this meeting. So he was very strong in his opinion, but of course he was a phenomenal scholar, and I think everybody wanted to have his thoughts and tried to be a part of discussions with him. So
Yeah, yeah. What Danish Bhai said, just I say that it was General Kayani. He said that you go out. And when he was meeting with Musharraf in Delhi in Pakistani High Commission, he said, "You go out, and I only need to sit with the him and discuss the Kashmir plan, which actually Vajpayee Saab and actually Musharraf Saab can discuss. I
Yeah,
don't need you because he was ISI. I mean, that time actually. Right? So this is a kind of personality where he did not allow anybody to come. That's what we are actually doing.
yeah. Thank you very much. I think we cannot stop this conversation going, and but I have to stop. uh, so anyway, we are just 6 minutes over. But you have a lot to say. But what we can do is, like, if each one of you would like to summarize what you would like to say in 1 minute, I think with that we can move to the vote of thanks. You can,
Uh,
if you like to conclude.
Danish bhai,
okay, well, as I said, Nurani Saab lived a full life, And till it was possible, he continued to read and write and research. And there are so many tales about him, making requests for documents, making requests for judgments. So he was on the ball. He was fascinated by this idea of research, by finding solutions, by offering solutions to vexed problems that India faced, that vexed problems global South faced. And he was very sincere in his approach, I will say. He went by records, he went by archival data, he went by his research. He didn't let his emotions or his thoughts come in the way of something that will be in contrast to his findings. And I think that is a great takeaway from his life. That is one way to celebrate his life, that you must always go with facts, you must always undertake meticulous research. I mean, he had no qualms in calling a book on Maulana Azad as a hagiography. I mean, even though he liked Azad, he was not a kind of person who will want only good things to be said about anybody. And he will not have any problems dismissing such works, because what he wanted was critical approach, not hero worshipping. And I think that is a clear message in these times, where hero worshipping and putting emphasis on one personality or one party is the norm. We have to stay away from that. And that is what Dr. A.G. Noorani's life, teaches us, that we should be critical in our thinking.
Thank you. Yeah,
Uh,
Professor Shaban.
just I would like to, say the 2 points. The first point is that uh, he had enormous praise, although, for each communities of India, but specifically for Hindu communities, also the secular Hindu and the multicultural, those who are with that framework. He said that actually they understand the minorities, because assimilation is this. For him, the Hindu Muslim assimilation is this. But simultaneously, he was very critical the new development. And that is where I see that the larger Hindu community also has, if you read A.G. Noorani Saab, you also need to look, the kind of criticism he offered. Perhaps there is a need for reading that by the larger Hindu community to understand Muslim more, and actually also the understanding that larger secular value what he was talking about. So the first thing that the Hindus need to learn, that what he wanted to talk about. Similarly, he comes very harshly on the Muslims, and particularly I am a big supporter of that, and praise that Muslim community is hijacked by the communalist and the elitist. And he had no, hesitation in saying that. He says that what actually these organizations they are floating, they compromise everything. Equality, liberty, which actually even the religion offers, not the constitution. And still they become the leader and they occupy the position. And that what actually I said, that what is said to the Babi Masjid Action Committee leader. That is where I see, and that actually says the plight of the Muslims is actually because of their immature behavior also. And this is something which actually is critical for us, self-assessing. Muslims themselves need to assess themselves, that where actually they are reaching to that what kind of politics. And self-introspection is needed. And that is where he offers a kind of lessons for both Hindus and Muslims in order to forge larger idea of India, and actually building a strong nation and idea which is based on the territorial a kind of imagination, rather than a cultural imagination, because the culture fused together for him to make a territory, not actually one culture and one territory. That actually is not idea of the nation, I would say, and idea of India. With this, I
Yeah, um, thank you very much for both Professor Shaban and Dr. Khan for your insightful and thought-provoking talks today. Your reflections on A.G. Nurani's life and work have enriched our understanding and the audience, those who are listening online. We appreciate your time and valuable contributions, especially both of your evenings that we really appreciate spending with us. And I will also finally would like to extend my gratitude to all the organizations co-sponsored it, especially within a very short period of time. We started discussing about this in a week, and the final flyer was out only uh, 2 days ago. So I'd like to thank all the members and the leadership of the Indian Muslim Relief and Charities (IMRC), Indian Muslims of Bay Area and Ambedkar King Study Circle. And definitely, we cannot stop this conversation. It will definitely keep going. But whatever we learned from today, that we have to carry forward the legacy and the life and the values of A.G. Noorani's, which he talked for, especially the forging an alliance across the spectrum, and work for the vibrant democracy, which is inclusive and secular. And I'd like to thank you all, the audience and the speakers again. We will see once again soon. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Karthik.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Shaban. Thank you, Dr. Rao. Bye.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks.